Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Players NIL podcast. And my good friend of all 5 minutes and guest today, Luke Fedlam. Luke, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much, Mark. Really excited to be here.
Cool. So, Luke, I take everyone on a journey because, we're very fortunate. You and I both, I think, having been able to use athletics to better our lives and our experience professionally, and for me personally as well. But before we get there, I want to talk about two words, and I use these two words not interchangeably. To me, they're different. The two words are sports and athletics. And to me, sports is the fandom part, okay? It's the, first game you went to. It's the first time you met an athlete. Athletics is perhaps your participation and your involvement with sports. So let's start with sports because that normally comes first in a kid's life. But tell me about your childhood exposure to sports, the teams, the players. Who'd you go to a game with? What was the superstar that you first got enamored with?
Well, I'll tell you, I love this conversation. I was a diehard Knicks fan when I was a kid. I was all basketball all day. I grew up in upstate New York. So, about 2 hours from New York City. I was Knicks. I was in the Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, John Starks, just that whole Anthony Mason, Larry Johnson, all those guys, Greg Anthony, like I love the Knicks. And I really wasn't big into baseball, but I will never forget the first time I went to Yankee Stadium and got to watch a Yankees game just live, and it absolutely blew my mind. So, yeah, man, I still remain a diehard Knicks fan, by the way. Baseball, I'm a fair weather fan. I wait to the playoffs and then I make a decision.
Well, I'm a Long Island guy, and for me, a little bit older than you, but it was Mets, Jets, Nets. So believe me, I share your pain with your Knicks. I understand the long career that it's been, right?
Absolutely. So I haven't had anything good in 20 years.
Right. So you're out in the backyard, you're doing the sky hook like Patrick, or you're trying to do the crossover like Starks, and you're probably pounding boards like Oakley. So now you finally, get a chance to participate, and this is where the word athletics comes in. Tell me about your early athletic career. What did you do, and what sports were your favorite?
Yeah.
I think we broke up there. So tell me about your athletic career. What were your early dreams in sports that you participated?
So one of the things that I'll never forget about sports, and let's just say athletics, is really the first. So I moved to New York from Nebraska when I was about, 9 years old, 10 years old. And during that time, I will never forget. It was 5th grade. I was starting a brand new school, and I was trying to you want to fit in. It's everybody's new. I'm not from here, and it's 5th grade. And I remember the first day of 5th grade, it was a rainy day, so we didn't go outside for recess. The second day of school, it was beautiful out. We went outside for recess. Everybody in my class, like basically all the guys, right, went to play kickball. And, you pick your two captains, you pick teams. I was the last kid picked. I kicked a home run in that game. And the third day of school, I was the first one picked. So it's fascinating, right? How sports, athletics, how it really brings people together. And for me, that's really the story of my life. Athletics has always been something that can bring people together all the way up till, I'm in my 40s now. And up until a little earlier this year, I was still playing basketball, a little back injury. So hopefully I'll get back out on the court next year sometime. But it really is that it's an opportunity for people to come together, right? And to get to know each other in ways that you wouldn't really get to know each other, but for the blood, sweat, and tears that you have together in the game of whatever it may be. So for me, kickball, obviously, listen, shoot, I would still play kickball to this day. But it ended up being for me basketball, cross country, and track. I noticed that I was pretty quick, ran cross country, played basketball, and loved basketball, but and ended up going to Wake Forest University, ran there for a year, not on scholarship, walked onto the team, ran for a year and was like, I was fast in high school, but I'm not ACC fast. And I've loved it, but I just, there were a lot of other things that I wanted to do. So that kind of ended my kind of formal participation in sports, but it always continued to be just a part of my life.
Love it. Love the story. And yeah, I'm guessing Wake Forest had a few guys that could run around the track pretty quick, right?
Indeed. We were pretty solid program there.
And maybe even in intramurals, jump out of the gym. I don't know.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, I played intramural basketball. In addition to breaking my nose twice, I had an absolute ball playing. Great athletes playing, and yeah, had a really good time.
So we started with sports. We talked about your athletic career. You get to Wake Forest. You're on the track. Career is over, but you're still involved with sports. You're still interested in sports. You're still working with athletes. Tell us about how your experience and your passion for sports got you into the academic career of your choice, your first couple jobs. How did you stay in contact with sports and athletics?
Sure, it is interesting because my desire to participate, engage, play sports throughout my life has always opened doors for me. And my academics, my parents were always big on academics. And so that was always an important part of my life. But I'll never forget, again, right after I graduated, I started working at an investment firm in Philadelphia. And when I was at this investment firm, you start to realize like there's this kind of subculture of folks playing intramural basketball or going out for runs at lunchtime and things like that. And you start to recognize as you dive into that, you have this opportunity to spend this kind of personal time with people, sweating together, being nasty, not having to feel like you're on or that you're, putting your best self forward as you're gasping for air, running hills or playing, whatever it may be. And it was that kind of engagement that really helped me get to know my profession better, help me get to know my colleagues better. So when you think about it, athletics, there's really something there. And even to this day, even when you talk about, just the fandom, right? So again, like I talked about, that investment firm was in Philadelphia. I started there in 2001. It was Donovan McNabb's second year. I hadn't, up until that point, I was into college football, hadn't really gotten into the NFL. But you almost can't live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania without some type of allegiance to an NFL team. And for me, without question, it was the Philadelphia Eagles. And even to this day, even though at the time that we're recording this, we just suffered our first loss of the season, I'll tell you, I am a diehard Eagles fan. And a lot of people don't understand, well, how do you be a Knicks fan for basketball and an Eagles fan for football? That makes no sense. Pick a city. But for me, it really came back to, the way in which I picked my teams. And, one of the things that was really important to me when I graduated college and lived in Philly and worked in Philly, this idea of a Black quarterback, right? In 2001, that was out there, kind of underdog story in the sense that the Eagles fans didn't want him. They booed him when he got drafted. And, to see the success that he had on the field and, the number of NFC, East championships that we had and playoff runs. And even though we didn't get to the big show or at least win the big show anyway until 2017, hey, at least I got a championship because the Knicks in my lifetime haven't given me anything.
Yeah, exactly. I actually was living in Syracuse at the time and was a season ticket holder and saw Donovan almost every game that he played in college. He was a great college player and a great NFL player. So actually, I saw him on a pregame last night with your current quarterback. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
so your passion is there. You're developing this career. At some point, you go back to law school, and now you take that, and now you're really working with athletes. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Sure. It was interesting. So I worked at this investment firm, was there for about 5 years. I thought I was going to go work for a year, go on to law school. Ended up really enjoying what I was doing, was there for about 5 years, a little over 5 years. Got recruited to a sports management firm with a former colleague at that investment firm. And so moved down to Miami, Florida, started working with athletes on the financial side of the equation. And this was 2006, 2007, 2008. So we're now in this era of the subprime mortgage crisis, the Great Recession, these real estate deals just ballooning and athletes getting taken advantage of. In fact, that was when that seminal article was written by Pablo Torre in Sports Illustrated, How and Why Professional Athletes Go Broke, and talked about how 78% of NFL players were broke or experiencing financial distress within 2 years of when they ended up playing. And that really struck me. And being on the financial side of working with athletes, I found myself bringing in a lot of different lawyers to help them, but the lawyers didn't really understand the athletes. And so I found myself, and the athletes definitely didn't understand lawyers, and I found myself kind of translating between the two. So I joined the military shortly after 9/11. I was in the Army National Guard, so I could work and serve in the military. I got called into active duty in 2009. And it was during that year that I was like, if I'm ever going to go on to law school, if I'm ever going to kind of try to work with athletes on the legal side, now's the time to do it. So when I got off of active duty, enrolled in Ohio State's law school. And from there, just, kind of the rest is history. Went on to practice law, and working with athletes and, my substantively doing corporate work, corporate transaction work, but bringing on athletes as clients and really focusing on how do I really protect athletes so that anything they sign their name to, we're making sure that they understand what they're signing, that we're negotiating it to their benefit so they don't get taken advantage of.
Well, I love it. And, that's the second motto of our company here at the Players NILs. How do we use athletics to better the lives of the people around us, right? And so, it could be through your community, could be through your friends and family, could be your own family, could be through your clients in your case. So tell us a little bit about your work in NIL today and what you're currently working on, and then we'll get into the advice portion before we close out.
Absolutely. So in working with individual athletes, how I did a lot of education one-on-one. So it wasn't just like, hey, let me negotiate this agreement for you. It was like, you need to understand how to protect yourself as you navigate this and understand some additional life skills. And so it was that work starting in Anomaly in 2015, where we started working with college athletic departments, with some NFL teams. And then comes 2019 when California passes name, image, and likeness in their state. Then 2020, Florida decides to push everything forward and they pass it and making it go public, active in 2021, July 1st of 2021. And so it was at that point where we were just like, we've got to create a curriculum. We've worked with athletes on the legal side, doing name, image, and likeness without calling it that. It was just called in professional athletes doing endorsement deals. So we know this space. We know the ways in which people try to take advantage through contracts and forcing them into making quick decisions and all of those things. So really created a curriculum, partnering with a company out of Philadelphia called Team Ultimus, and Courtney Ultimus, who's their CEO, who had a financial background working 20 plus years on Wall Street. And having that financial education for athletes, we just thought, it's great for two unbiased organizations to come together to develop this curriculum focused on NIL at the college space. And so we currently are working with schools across the country to try to help educate not just their student athletes, but also their coaches, their athletic administrators, and understanding NIL and how quickly, as you well know, all of these changes are happening. I mean, seriously, Mark, you're in this space. You get to see every single day how schools are pushing the envelope or looking at things differently. And these changes are coming quickly. And to be able to help educate athletes so that they can end up having all these opportunities, but managing the responsibilities that come with those opportunities so that when they leave school, and we know that most of them aren't going to go pro, but when they leave school, they're in a better position than when they started. And there are some real risks out there that taxes, finances, and others that could put them in a situation where they're worse off. And so we want to make sure that they're better off when they start. And the other thing that we're working on, honestly, is now at the high school level as well. Because at this point, there are about 20 states now where the public high school athletic associations have passed name, image, and likeness for their high school student athletes. There are a couple more states that are likely going to pass in December. So we're going to end this year, with almost half of the states in the country allowing name, image, and likeness at the high school level. And when you think about that education requires education not just for the student athlete, but for the parents and guardians as well, because they're the ones that would sign off on deals for their sons and daughters. So a lot of work, but I'll tell you, as you well know, there's nothing better than doing this work, because I will say this: I love sports. I'm excited about sports, but my true passion is about making sure that young people get the education they need to succeed and not be taken advantage of. That's what I get excited about every single day. That's why I love jumping out of bed and tackling whatever the day brings, because we have the opportunity to deliver that education in a way that is meaningful and impactful to student athletes, their parents, coaches, and staff.
I love it. I love it. So you've been involved with name, image, and likeness way before it was called that, as you said. You've seen the rollout, July 2021 to where we are today, 16 months later. Give me 2 or 3 things that surprised you in the first 16 months of authorized NIL.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that. Absolutely, authorized NIL. So I think a few things that surprised me is really right off the bat. What surprised me was how many coaches and athletic administrators were saying NIL is not really going to affect many of my student athletes. It's really just going to be for the elite of the elite. And so instantly I was like, what do you mean? How could you think that that's the case when, in my opinion, name, image, and likeness is an equal opportunity for student athletes, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of size of school, regardless of sport, to be able to earn compensation off of their name, image, and likeness in ways they've never been able to before. Student athletes these days are growing up. They all have grown up in the social media era. Social media to them is a part of life. For guys like you and me, we have to think about it. We have to think proactively about, oh, I need to post this on social. Whereas younger folks, younger generation, that's just natural to them. So there are student athletes that are not elite by any means, that aren't even starters on their teams, who are doing NIL deals because they happen to have a significant following on social media. So I think it was surprising to me that a lot of powers that be didn't see that coming. So that's number one. I think number two, which I think is surprising, and I don't want to put all of this on the administrators, but what's surprising to me was the lack of urgency in coming up with partners or programs to provide education for athletes. I'll tell you this, we have the opportunity with the work that we get to do to work with about 16, we work with about half of the NFL. So 16 NFL teams. We go in, we talk to their rookies, talk to second and third year players, veterans. And this offseason, there were about 7 or 8 NFL rookie teams that we talked to before training camp started. And of those teams, every single team had a player or their player engagement person that came up and said that we've got a player on a team, or the player came up themselves to say, I did name, image, and likeness last year. I didn't pay my taxes. What do I need to do now? And that to me is the scary reality, because those are players that, for those guys, assuming they made the roster, they're in a place where they have the ability to pay the penalties, pay the fines, pay the back taxes, and get caught up. But knowing that 98% of athletes in college are not going to go pro, it is very likely that if they're not getting taught about what it means to get paid in gross, to be an independent contractor, to not have anybody withhold your taxes, they could be in this situation.
Sorry about that. I don't know. I guess it's my system, but we'll edit it. But so we got to the taxes part. So now, and I've said this all along, April 15th, 2023, there's going to be a lot of bad stories in the press, right? It's scary. Keep going.
I was going to say, it is scary because there are situations where you could have student athletes that are worse off from when they started playing sports, when they started college. Because if you're not going pro and you end up graduating, they're going to be, because of NIL collectives and for so many other reasons that we could get into at another time, there are some college student athletes who are going to make more money in college than they do in their first job when they graduate college. And if you're in a situation where now you haven't paid taxes, the IRS it's a much scarier organization than the NCAA. They don't care. They don't need to wait. They don't need to come at you right in this season. They can wait for a couple of years when they finally get around to it and realize you haven't paid taxes and we have all these 1099s for you over the years. Guess what? You're going to need to now pay your taxes. And I think that's a scary proposition for a lot of student athletes.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so the last minute here, this is the advice section. Besides pay your taxes, you know, as an NIL advisor and as a leader in the industry, talking to this new world, right? This is something that many people don't understand. And that's what I've learned in my 16 months working in this space, is how many people don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
So give me a couple tips, give me a couple pointers, couple bullet points about things student athletes and their families should pay attention to.
Yeah. Number one, student athletes and their families should make sure that they understand any contract before they sign it. That sounds so, it sounds like common sense, but there is a level of excitement that comes when you get your first NIL deal or offer. There's a level of excitement that comes when you have money that's being offered to you. You want to just sign whatever it takes to get that money. But you have to understand, what are you giving up? What do you have to do? What's the impact? What rights do you have? That contract is critically important. And I'll be honest, if it's a bad contract, and trust me, there are a lot of bad contracts out there, that can be a real detriment to you down the road. If you ever want to get out of that contract, or you want to enforce something against someone else so that they're not using your NIL without your authorization, understand a contract before you sign it, number one. Number two, have a plan for how you want to engage in name, image, and likeness. What is it that you want to get out of it? Most student athletes, when we ask them, hey, what do you think of first when you think of NIL? Everybody says money. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But I encourage families to think beyond just the money. What is it that you want out of NIL? Do you want to increase your following? Do you want to create a nest egg for you for down the road? Do you want to, have a social impact and being able to impact your community in different ways? Because whatever your answer is to that question is going to help you to understand how to best navigate name, image, and likeness for your benefit. So having an actual plan around name, image, and likeness can be helpful and help relieve some of the stress of feeling like nobody's reaching out to me. I don't know why I'm not getting deals. Well, think about what it is that you want to get out of it, and then feel comfortable in reaching out to those companies. So have a plan. And then finally, be authentic to yourself. We get a lot of questions about, how do I get started? What do I do? And I always like to start with, just be authentic to yourself. What are the brands you already use? What do you value? What are your values? What is that you want to get out of name, image, and likeness? And is when you start to answer those questions for yourself, it starts to create a roadmap for you to figure out how you're going to navigate name, image, and likeness. Because now you can think about, if having a social impact is really important to me, I want to look at some nonprofits that are meaningful, right? I was adopted, right? So I went through foster care. I was adopted. And so for me, I'm on a board of a nonprofit that focuses on supporting kids going through adoption and things along those lines. So if I were doing name, image, and likeness, that would be something meaningful to me. I would think about, how can I help promote this particular organization or some other organization, in a way that's meaningful to me, and still I can be compensated for my time and for my work. So that's, again, be authentic, I think, and be true to yourself and what it is that's meaningful to you with name, image, and likeness. And I think you'll go far.
I think that's great advice, all 3 points, and it comes from someone that knows, because you're in the space and have been in the space. You're not one of the new employees here that jumped into the deep end of the pool with no knowledge of what goes on. Luke, I love it. I love the work that you're doing. You're passionate about it, comes across on the screen. Congratulations on all of your accomplishments. I know that you've got a lot more to do, and as name, image, and likeness evolves, I'm sure that we're going to see more from you and your companies. And I just want to say thank you for being my guest today.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for having me. Best of luck with the Players NIL. Love what you're doing and really appreciate the time.